Good morning. It is Thursday. Today's topic is going to cover a very interesting midweek special session, I guess you could say, last night. Our game is on a Monday night, but oftentimes through the week I will run little add-ons. Not really a full session, but I'll give additional background information or allow kind of some small events to take place that just mean that we can then speed along the actual session. Not that it ever works, but that's the idea at least. So, where we left off the last session, we had the two ogre brothers at odds with the rest of the crew over the fact that their brother had died from pulling from the deck of many things. And basically, as part of all of the resolution of that, it came about that the ogres would continue to work with the ship. Not necessarily still like the ship, but they would continue to work on the ship if Vorian, the person who they feel convinced their brother to draw from the deck, drew as many times from the deck as their brother had. So, basically, in that discussion then, a couple other people on the ship decided that if he was going to draw, why not they were going to draw as well. So last night I had a bit of a card drawing session. Had the players on Skype. I was in roll 20. I drew out the cards and then I presented them to the players. Vorian, the first character, bearing in mind, before I go any further, I'm using a custom deck of many things that I generated that is a 52 card deck. So it is a full deck of cards. So there's a lot more going on in this deck than in a normal deck. First card that he drew was the Halfwit, a minus to his intelligence score. Not a great thing, but he's a sorcerer, not a wizard, so not the end of the world. The second card that he drew, one of the more powerful custom cards that I have in there, allows him to immediately change his class to whatever class he wants to be, and then advance himself to level 20. Now these guys are like 14, 15 anyway, so they're not weak by any stretch. They are very powerful anyway. But advancing those extra 5 levels ahead of the group to 20 is going to make Vorian very, very formidable. Following that, the other guys started to draw. Yoki drew one card, and it ended up being a card called the Hierophant. Excuse me. And basically what the Hierophant does is it gives him a full day's complement of druidic spells. Now, he doesn't have to cast them in a day, but he has a day's worth of spells that he can cast, marking them off as he goes, and they don't regenerate. So, he can use them whenever he needs to over time, but he has a finite number of them. It's a good card, not one of the great cards, but it's not a bad card. And then we come to Revu. And Revu decides to draw 2 cards. He draws his first card and hits Donjon. Sealed away in a forgotten prison. It was all going so well. So well. And, there you have it. So, seeing all of this, the 2 Ogre brothers, who originally convinced Vorian he had to draw, decide they want to draw as well. And Tubby, the druidic brother, he draws 1, and they watch as his form changes and he becomes a gnome. Probably not exactly what he was going for, but yeah. And then Grubby decides to go. Grubby is the fighter brother, the dumbest of the 3, and he decides to grab a handful of cards. I rolled a die. I rolled the highest it would go. So he took 5 cards. And it was interesting how he turned out. He drew the key, so a rare or better magic item. He drew ruin, so all of his money, titles, land, etc. is all gone, which he didn't really have any of anyway. He drew a couple. He got a minus to his charisma. I can't remember what card number 4 was. It was something fairly minor. And then the last card that he drew gave him, well, it turned him into a half ogre, half fiend. And changed his alignment to evil. So, yeah. The crew's not aware of the alignment change yet. There's no reason they would be. But that could come into play. Who knows? Maybe. Maybe not. So, just recapping the last couple weeks. I know this isn't the normal Monday game recap, but just because this has kind of come out of it. In the last 3 weeks, we've lost Bill, the first of the Ogre brothers, killed by the deck of many things. We've then lost Susha, who decided to leave the crew. We've lost Revu, who is in a forgotten prison somewhere. If we go back a little bit further than that, we lost Shorty, one of the NPC crew members, because he was on the run and was afraid that he was going to get found out if he stayed with the ship. We lost 01 because he was turned over to the authorities and put in jail, or possibly executed. They haven't checked. There's been a lot of loss in the last few weeks of the game. And it's interesting to see the different player reactions players to this, because I get the impression that some of my players have not been in games where they've lost that many people before, and there's been a bit of a panic on that, well, that I'm killing off players to kill the game, which is completely and totally not the case. But anytime you run a group-based drama, because that is basically what we're running here, one of the interesting pieces of drama to explore is the changing of personnel. Star Wars did it a number of ways. When Han Solo was captured and Lando came in flying the Falcon, it was a way of changing the dynamic between the characters. Star Trek, when Tasha Yar died, and they had to deal with the fallout from that. Almost any kind of traditional media, especially space media, because bear in mind this is Spelljammer, we are in space, that crew mentality and that change, that dynamic change of people being replaced, that's part of it. Now, I use that in my D&D games anyway, because risk of death adds an element of tension to the game. So I didn't change any of the cards, I just drew the cards. And that does mean that neither did I force them down a path, nor did I save them from that path. It was literally just pick up a card, this is what it says. And fate falls where it may. Events in the game right now are fairly dire for this group. They are on the run from multiple groups. They are losing people left and right. And the tension right now in the game is, how do they hold it together and keep going? Is their mission worthwhile enough for them to press on? And I think that's exasperated at the moment, because a lot of them aren't really sure why they're going to Austerna. They've got this thing in their head right now that they're going to Austerna, but not all of them are even sure why. A couple of them want to make sure that Sveltenum is okay. The Titan that they met previously, who was desperately trying to get back to Austerna. A couple of them are going because Sanshara offered them Mr. X's freedom if they brought him proof. Although there is still some question at the moment of, after the recent changes to Mr. X, if that binding even still applies. So there are reasons floating around, but not everyone is 100% bought into them, which again is adding an interesting dynamic to all of the losses that are ongoing. So yeah, that's kind of where we stand at the moment. Some more losses in the crew, some more questions about where we're going, why we're going, how we're going, all of that stuff. And And with that, we're preparing for Monday night again. So, I'll leave it there for today. Like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And, have a great day.